With the prophecy having been averted, we can finally let the dust settle and take a more detailed look at the law surrounding Fontaine. When we look at its history, all these secret societies, 500-year plans, and doomsday prophecies converge, or rather originate, from a single point: the sin that Fontaine committed. Now, on the surface, we're told that this sin was related to the act of Egeria, the first Hydroarchon, creating humans. But what if it wasn't that at all, and this sin is related or at least similar in nature to what others like Kenria and Dash's empire have done in the past? That's what we'll discuss in this video. What if the sin had nothing to do with creating humans? Before we dive into Teyvat's past, if you want to see more Genshin Impact content, do consider subscribing to the channel. Let me first clear something up. This is a theory video, meaning it may turn out to be wrong. I am aware that the sin related to the creation of humans was outright mentioned, and if we take that for what it is, then the story ends there. But I wanted to make this video because there might be some overlap with some other factions if we assume for a second that the sin had nothing to do with the creation of humans, but rather how they were made. So just keep that in mind as this video progresses. Let's first start with the most recent story related to sins against Celestia, Fontaine. The prophecy implies that Celestia punished the Fontainians and the Hydroarchon after the Archon had converted all Oceanids to human form. On the surface, it's natural to correlate these two events. Humans were created, which led to Celestia becoming angry, and thus must mean that the creations of those new humans is what angered them. But there's one thing that I think might have been the actual cause, and it's not the creation of humans, but rather the fact that Egeria had used the primordial sea. The primordial sea is said to be an element or substance that existed on Teyvat way back in the past, before the heavenly principles had even arrived there. It was a body of water that had the ability to not only give life, but non-Fontainians received much higher sensitivity to the hydro element when they were exposed to it. It seemed to be described as a pretty significant part of Teyvat, at least in the past. Now, according to Novelet, this sea no longer exists, but how did something that seems so significant disappear? As it happens, Novelet's own law might actually give an explanation on this. In his vision law, it's mentioned that after the usurper, the heavenly principles, and the second who came created the gnosis, an order was said to have been established. From this point on, humans only possessed 7 remembrances, which I think refers to the 7 elements, and that the primordial were driven to devour each other. It seems that once the gnosis were in place, every other thing that was tied to Teyvat or maybe existed in the past, like the primordial sea, were functionally gone, and in their place were the 7 elements. I think that the minute Egeria made use of the primordial sea, it went against this order that Celestia had established, and is the real reason they wanted to destroy the Fontainians, because they were now functionally part primordial sea and not because they were pseudo-humans. But why would Celestia care so much about this primordial element or its use? Well, I'll get back to that a little later in the video. Now, if this was the true cause of Celestia's anger, are there any other examples of this? I mean, one instance can't constitute proof, right? As it turns out, there may actually be some. Try and recall whether there is another nation or group that Celestia has recently punished. That's right, Kenria. In the Pale Flame artifact set, Piero, or the Jester, explains how he was once one of the court mages in Kenria. Due to his inexperience, he was unable to prevent the then King of Kenria, Ermin, from tearing the Veil of Sin. Again, the word sin makes an appearance here. Because of this sin, Celestia passed judgment and Kenria was destroyed. Now we know that what Kenria was trying to do was to harness the power of the Abyss, so just keep that in mind. In Clothar Alberic's story, we meet yet another sinner who, long story short, imbued Clothar with abyssal energy. Now, given both Kenria and the sinner were claimed to have sinned against Celestia, and both were using a source of power or energy outside of the 7 elements, it seems that doing so is the recurring pattern here, and what really makes people be branded as sinners. There is one more possibility based on past stories, and this one is related to forbidden knowledge. Now, in King Dashret's empire, it's revealed that Dashret had been pursuing forbidden knowledge, and in doing so was the cause of all the withering and Elazar. It essentially destroyed his kingdom, and again, there seems to be ties to an external power source. This forbidden knowledge was originally brought to Teyvat from the outside by the Dragon King Nibelang, but this may be something else entirely, though I thought to include it here anyway. So currently, in the lore we have so far, there hasn't been any other examples of the creation of humans being a problem. But using elements not sanctioned by Celestia now has three separate occurrences, which has led to the destruction of each of those nations that were involved with them. This leads me to believe that the true issue is related to using powers or energy unsanctioned by Celestia. I think the creation of humans isn't the primary problem, but rather the fact each faction have used elements that fall outside of the seven that were allowed. Now, I don't know why a restriction has been placed on anything outside seven elements, but if I were to guess, it's probably related to control. I mean, think about what the primordial sea was able to do for a non-Fontainian. It increased their hydrosensitivity. I start to wonder whether given enough exposure, could an individual even start to control the hydro element without a vision? If humans were able to access elements through these primordial sources, then why even need vision? On top of that, think about what Novalat was able to do the minute he reobtained control over the primordial sea and most of his powers. He was able to forcibly change the oceanic humanoids into true blood humans, and is now likely able to go against even the gods in terms of sheer power. I suspect that using other sources of powers, be it the primordial sea or the abyss energy, allows anyone to go against Celestia itself, whereas if only elemental energy was available, no one could stand against them, as it's a source of power they have monopolized. This is why I think the sinners aren't those that created humans, but rather utilized or brought into Teyvat energies or powers that Celestia doesn't want others to use. Now, there is another side to this. Perhaps these alternative sources of power are just too unstable or dangerous to begin with. I mean, I've previously speculated that the forbidden knowledge could be Honkai energy, and perhaps the heavenly principles banned them to ensure Teyvat won't be destroyed due to irresponsible use. This is difficult to confirm, however, given we know too little about Celestia or the Abyss in the first place. Keep in mind that these ideas are in truth nothing more than just a wild theory I had, and none of this has or can be explicitly proven, at least not right now. It could go either way at this point, and with this video, I thought to just add another angle to all of this. Could Celestia's problem be related to using energies or powers outside of the seven elements, or is the creation of humans really the problem here? Let me know in the comments what you think. That does it for this video though. If you enjoyed it, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice day.